Now, speaking of CM Punk, he made the trip to Italy on Friday to confront Roman Reigns, as did Seth Rollins. And what we ended up with, considering who was involved, was a very underwhelming segment. But they did make it official that at WrestleMania, it will be Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins in a triple threat match. Nothing on the line, at least not at this point, but that match is now official. And that right there is your night one main event, most likely. Roman Reigns came out. He claimed that CM Punk screwed him at the Royal Rumble. And how, pray tell, did he screw him? By eliminating him. Oh, the horror. He eliminated him in a Royal Rumble, where it is every man for himself. And you're going to tell me that this man isn't still a heel? Had Logan Paul not dumped Punk out of the ring right after, Roman would have pulled a Hulk Hogan in 92 and pulled him out of the ring himself. So that's why he said he smashed him at Madison Square Garden. Seth Rollins, he said, tried to kill him at the Royal Rumble, so he tried to kill Rollins at Madison Square Garden. So then Rollins came out, and he blames Roman for not letting him end Punk in the cage match because he's a cancer to the company and to the business as a whole. Punk comes out and accurately points out that Roman saying he screwed him in the Royal Rumble is ridiculous, and had he consulted his wise man, he would know that, because it is every man for himself. And he reminded us that he's also owed a favor from Paul Heyman for helping Roman in War Games, but he never did tell us what that favor was before attacking Roman, and then it turned into a giant brawl with all three. And considering, we get on average these days approximately 1.8 pull-apart brawls on TV every week, this one wasn't even all that good. And they each pointed up to the WrestleMania sign. I mean, seriously, that is how they set this match up. They all pointed at the stupid sign like everybody else does. They sent Paul Heyman out to the ring in Barcelona last week to kill the crowd by telling them, oh, Roman isn't here, but he'll be in Italy next week. And don't forget to play the video game. And then they did the exact same thing with Seth Rollins on Raw Monday in Brussels, telling the crowd Roman and Punk, they're not here, but they'll be in Bologna on Friday, and I think I'll join them. So then after all this hype, we get all three of them together, and this is what they give us? I thought it was lame. That entire 3 hours on Friday was uninspired, just like they were going through the motions because they were overseas and they knew the crowd's going to be hot for it regardless of what we give them. Yeah, I made the comparison the other night that it reminded me of the Dynamite coming out of Revolution, where, yes, they progressed some stories and it wasn't a completely useless show. You could say the same thing about that show on Friday, but it wasn't really fun. There was no excitement to it. No life. Both of those things can be true. You can have a show that moves some stories forward and also admit that it was a dull show if you thought that it was a dull show. So right now they've got 4 more weeks. In those 4 weeks, I don't know how many more times we're even going to get Roman Reigns on TV because apparently, he's not allowed to work more than 10 shows a year. So they need to make the most of the appearances that he does make. And there was a lot left to be desired from that exchange with him and CM Punk. That's what I was looking forward to. Like, there's so much more to explore with the two of them. I mean, you could even take it all the way back to 2014 if you want to, 2013. But even if you don't go back that far, there's so much more there to be explored. And, you put these two in the ring together like this. We got a small taste of it with that cinematic segment they did before War Games, the sit down, with Heyman. And so now here we are. And that was months ago. That was just a little taste. And now here we are 4 weeks out from WrestleMania, not even sure what shows Roman is going to be on between now and then. And they've still given us next to nothing between them. But the match is official now, and if you base it purely off of the history between these three and the story, especially with Roman and Rollins, let alone Punk and Rollins, then it should close the show on night one. The one knock on it is that there's nothing on the line. With Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and Io Sky, you got the Women's World Championship on the line, but it doesn't have the story that the other match does. And the hook of potentially finding out what that favor is that Punk is owed from Paul Heyman. Maybe it factors into the finish of the match. Maybe there's some kind of big twist or swerve, or unlikely, but, Heyman, leaves Reigns and goes with Punk or Raw. You never know. They may have some big finish planned for the match. If they go with Rhea, Bianca, and Io, which, by the way, is still just Bianca and Io, Rhea has not yet been added to the match officially. But let's assume she is, and she doesn't just end up as a fucking referee or something like that. Look, I wouldn't mind that either. If they wanted to close the show with those three, you could absolutely make the argument for those three. But the other match is bigger. Gunther against Jey Uso. Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble. The idea right now, as I sit here, of those two closing the show on either night feels like a joke. Even though Jey won the Rumble, and at least one of the Royal Rumble winners should theoretically get the actual main event spot at WrestleMania, the idea of them going on last right now just seems so foreign to me. Now, the build to Gunther and Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight title, they have hit a wall, and they need to do something fast. On Monday, they had Jey beat Austin Theory with a spear, if you could call it that, in 30 seconds. From beating John Cena at WrestleMania to jobbing out to Jey Uso in 30 seconds. I am debating which was more of a waste, wasting a John Cena WrestleMania match on Austin Theory or wasting Kurt Angle's retirement match on Baron Corbin, who doesn't even work there anymore. At least this time, when Gunther tried to put him in a sleeper hold, Jey was able to avoid it. But they've got Jey hanging out with Otis and Tozawa, and they have him wrestling Theory and Waller every week. It's no wonder this feels so underwhelming. We're less than 4 weeks out. The time is now to kick this into second gear. Have Gunther murder Jimmy. Or attack Rikishi. Something. Anything. But this thing is dying on the vine for me right now. Popular as Jey still is. I'm not saying he's not popular. But right now, just based on what they've done so far, this just doesn't feel like a major match at WrestleMania right now. Now, we have 6 matches that are official for the card. We have Cody Rhodes defending the WWE Championship against John Cena. We have Gunther defending the World Heavyweight title against Jey Uso. We have Tiffany Stratton defending the WWE Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair. Let me talk about this for a second. So they did a segment on Friday. It was a split screen. So they were in 2 different locations. And they just kind of let them talk all over each other. And Charlotte just demolished this poor girl during that segment. I mean, it felt very free-flowing, especially when Charlotte was talking over her. And Tiffany does not do well in those situations. I thought this segment made her look just completely inferior to Charlotte Flair. Like she's in way over her head. And either the material they gave Charlotte or the material Charlotte came up with. Yeah, she at one point, Tiffany was talking about how I'm the champion, and Charlotte just, again, steamrolls over her and says, via cash-in. Like, you're gloating about winning the title when you won it via cash-in? As if she doesn't walk around every day of her life with her Charlotte in the bank. But she throws the cash-in thing in her face, and then at another point, she mentions, because Tiffany said I'm the hottest thing going, I'm paraphrasing now, but Charlotte's like, honey, you're not even the hottest star on Smackdown. Like on the show that you are presently on, you are not even the hottest thing. So like everything she was throwing back at Tiffany, and Tiffany had no real good response to it. I just don't think she does well in these situations. And I've said before, like as a promo, she's not very good. She's really not. She comes off as just very awkward sometimes. I still don't know what she's going for as far as this character that she's portraying. She hasn't really changed at all. Obviously, the fans like her and they like, chanting Tiffy time. But even just the way that she, cuts promos and stuff, nothing has really evolved or changed from the first time we saw her called up to the main roster. So this was not a good night for Tiffany Stratton. I don't think that segment did her any favors at all. We have Io Sky defending the Women's World Championship against Bianca Belair. Rhea Ripley signed her name to the contract during the contract signing segment on Monday night. And even Adam Pearce had to come out and tell her, like, it doesn't work that way. Just because you put your name on the contract, it doesn't work like that. Even though we do have precedent for this many, many years ago for the WrestleMania 20 main event. But as I said, in my review, it was dumb then, and it's still dumb. And they're going to come up with some way. Rhea will backdoor her way into the match. I think we all know this. So it'll end up being a triple threat. And we have, speaking of triple threats, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and CM Punk. That match is now official. Randy Orton against Kevin Owens was also made official on SmackDown on Friday night. So those are the 6 matches that we know of for sure. Here are the likely matches. It is looking very likely that we are going to get Braun Breaker defending the Intercontinental title against Penta. Probably more than just Penta, but Penta made it clear on Monday he's coming for that title. But I think Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio end up being worked into this. So I'm looking at this thinking this is probably going to end up being a fatal 4-way, if I had to venture a guess. AJ Styles against Logan Paul is looking likely. Drew McIntyre against Damian Priest has all but been announced. And Jade Cargill, who lost her first singles match on television since losing to Chris Statlander in her very last match in AEW, lost to Liv Morgan on Friday due to some interference from Naomi. And Naomi finally was able to get one over on Jade. That match has not been announced, but that also will likely end up being a WrestleMania match. So that's the way the card is looking so far. Still incomplete. We'll see where the SmackDown tag team titles end up. I don't know if the Raw tag titles are going to be defended. I don't know if either of the women's mid-card titles are going to be defended. LA Knight, I'm still leaning towards LA Knight in a triple threat against some combination. It'll probably be Braun Strowman and Jacob Fatu. I thought it might be Jimmy and Jacob. Now I'm thinking it might be Strowman. Strowman's getting a U.S. title match this coming Friday. In London against LA Knight. If that match ends with no winner, then I do think we end up with at least a 3-way. Look, it may be the exact same situation for the IC and US titles, where we get a 3-way or we get a 4-way for each one. And interesting, they're a good 10,000 seats or so down each night in attendance so far, compared to what they would normally have out ticket-wise around this time for WrestleMania. So, they're still going to pull 50,000 plus for each night. And maybe they may even end up making more money than they ever have before because the prices are so jacked up. Vegas is expensive to begin with, but you look at these elevated WWE ticket prices, it's ridiculous. That's probably why tickets aren't selling at the rate they have before. I saw those numbers on WrestleTix and I thought, that's it? They're not even at 50,000 yet for each night. But when you consider what they're charging for those seats, you can see why they're not selling as well as they have before.